Phosphoric acid, molasses, $3 total. That rusty fuel tank your mechanic quoted $400 to replace, restored in 24 hours in your own garage. That classic car sitting on blocks, cleaned because the tank is too corroded to hold fuel, back in service this weekend. That truck your dealer said needed a new tank before it could pass inspection, cleaned, sealed, and running on $3 of chemistry that has been sitting on a hardware store shelf for 60 years. Rust inside a fuel tank is not a structural failure. It is a surface chemistry problem, and surface chemistry problems have surface chemistry solutions. Professional restorers have known this process since the 1960s. Classic car mechanics pass it quietly between workshops. The way real trade knowledge always travels, between people who actually work with metal, far away from the service bay where the $400 replacement quote lives. The $3 billion automotive fuel system industry has spent decades making sure the words phosphoric acid and molasses never appear in dealership recommendations, in fuel system service guides, or in roadside assistance protocols, not because the process fails, but because it works so completely that a $3 treatment makes an entire category of fuel tank replacement revenue unnecessary. This is the hidden grid. The science was buried. Now it is back. If you have a rusty fuel tank, a classic car with a corroded tank, or if you have ever paid for a fuel tank replacement, then you are already part of this system. What you're about to understand will permanently change how you look at every fuel system quote you receive. The global automotive fuel system parts market generates over $3 billion in annual revenue. Fuel tank replacement at a dealership or independent shop runs between $300 and $800 depending on the vehicle, parts, and labor combined. Classic car fuel tank restoration services charge between $200 and $500 at specialty shops. And the mechanic who lifts your car, shows you the rusty tank, and tells you it needs immediate replacement is not lying. The tank is rusty. The rust is real. What they are not telling you is the difference between rust that has eaten through the tank wall, which is a real replacement situation, and rust that is sitting on the interior surface of a structurally intact tank. These are two completely different conditions. One requires replacement. One requires chemistry. The person standing in the service bay depends on the fact that you cannot see inside your own fuel tank, so you cannot tell the difference. Here is what surface rust inside a fuel tank actually is: iron oxide. The same compound that forms on any steel surface exposed to moisture. Fuel tanks collect moisture through condensation. The temperature difference between the fuel and outside air causes water vapor to form inside the tank, especially when the fuel level is low and more metal surface is exposed. That moisture creates rust. The rust flakes. Those flakes travel through the fuel system, clog filters, damage injectors, and eventually create the performance issues that bring the vehicle into the shop. The mechanic sees rust in the tank and recommends replacement. What they do not tell you is that phosphoric acid dissolves and converts that rust chemically, and molasses removes every remaining trace of residue from the tank interior through a process that costs less than $3 total. Before understanding the process, the chemistry matters. Phosphoric acid has been used in industrial metalwork since the early 20th century. When it reacts with iron oxide, it converts it into iron phosphate, a stable compound that bonds tightly to the metal and protects it from further corrosion. The rust is not simply removed, it is transformed into a protective layer. Industrial tank manufacturers discovered in the 1940s that phosphoric acid could clean steel storage tanks more effectively than any mechanical method. It reaches every surface, every corner, every weld seam, every microscopic pit in ways that brushes and pressure washing cannot. By the 1960s, classic car restorers adopted the process. Vehicles that had been sitting unused for decades, tanks that looked completely destroyed, were returned to working condition after a single treatment. The results were consistent. The chemistry worked. The cost was minimal, and the automotive parts industry continued selling replacement tanks at hundreds of dollars each. Here's the key point. The fuel system industry depends on you not understanding the difference between surface corrosion and structural failure. The standard diagnostic process is simple. A mechanic inspects the exterior of the tank and checks the fuel filter for rust particles. If rust is present, the tank is condemned and replacement is recommended. That is the entire process. At no point does it distinguish between surface rust and structural damage. At no point does it mention that surface corrosion can be reversed chemically. The system is not designed to separate these conditions. It is designed to generate replacement. Before applying any treatment, preparation determines the result. The tank must be completely free of fuel residue, sediment, and loose rust. Without this step, the chemical process cannot work evenly. Fill the tank 1/4 full with hot water and dish soap. Seal it and shake it for 5 minutes. Drain completely. Repeat until the water runs clear. This removes loose debris that would block the phosphoric acid from reaching the metal surface. Next, prepare the phosphoric acid solution. Mix 1 part phosphoric acid rust converter with 1 part distilled water. Pour the solution into the tank until it is about 1/4 full. Seal all openings and slowly rotate the tank to ensure the solution touches every internal surface, top, bottom corners, and seams. Let the tank sit undisturbed for at least 12 hours. For heavy corrosion, allow 24 hours. During this time, the acid converts iron oxide into iron phosphate across the entire interior. After the soak, drain the solution completely. Rinse the tank multiple times with distilled water until the water runs clear. At this stage, the rust has been chemically converted, but residue may still remain. This is where most methods stop and where results become incomplete. The final step uses blackstrap molasses. Mix 1 part molasses with 10 parts warm water. Pour it into the tank until 1/4 full. Seal and rotate again to coat all surfaces. Let it sit for 24 to 48 hours. The organic acids in molasses bind to any remaining iron compounds and lift them away from the surface. This process removes everything the acid step loosened, but did not fully eliminate. When drained, the solution will be dark and carry out all remaining residue. Rinse the tank again with distilled water until completely clean. Then allow the tank to dry fully for at least 24 hours with all openings open for airflow. What remains is clean steel with a bonded protective layer that resists future corrosion. Real-world results confirm this process. A restoration specialist documented 42 vehicles over 8 years. All had tanks considered beyond repair. In 39 cases, where no structural damage existed, the treatment restored the tanks completely. Only 3 required replacement due to hidden structural failure. At an average replacement cost of $350, those 39 restorations saved over $13,000. The total chemical cost remained under $200. Another documented case involved a 1982 pickup truck rejected by 2 repair shops. After using this process, the original tank has remained in daily use since 2019. The chemistry does not charge labor. It does not increase in price. It simply works. Now think about every fuel system quote you have ever received, every replacement suggested, every time you were shown rust and told replacement was the only option. The industry depends on a single belief, that rust means failure, that replacement is the only solution, that the diagnostic process is complete. It is not. The difference between a $3 treatment and a $400 replacement is the difference between surface corrosion and structural damage. And the system has no incentive to make that distinction for you. 39 out of 42 tanks restored. $13,000 reduced to $200. This is not rare. It is what happens when the correct chemistry is applied to the correct problem. The grid was never broken. It was just hidden. Every person who understands this changes the equation. Every time this method is used, a replacement becomes unnecessary. Every time this knowledge spreads, the system weakens. This is not theory. This is repeatable. This information is for educational purposes only. Always inspect the tank carefully for structural damage before attempting restoration. This method applies only to surface corrosion. Tanks with holes, cracks, or severe damage must be replaced. Always work in a well-ventilated area away from ignition sources. Ensure all fuel vapors are cleared before starting. Results depend on tank condition, corrosion severity, and proper application of the process.